What is up, YouTube? This is Nanashi with a brand new deck profile video. This time I'll be showing you the changes and updates to my Earth deck, which has become nothing short of a rock-type spam system. The original version of this deck used to run the Koa'ki Meiru engine, which unfortunately was becoming more and more clunky and slow and just inoperable as a whole, even with the spamming from the extra deck as far as the fusion monsters. So I've decided to remove that part of the engine, focus more on the Gem Knight aspect and the other generic rock cards, and through the use of the new Gem Knight Link monster we also got, this deck is far faster than I ever expected it to be, especially considering it's basically just a bunch of rocks. Let me show you what I got. First off, we have the main deck monsters, starting with a pair of Gem Knight Laslie. If it's sent to the graveyard by a card effect, you can target a normal monster in your grave and put it back in your hand. I'm also running a pair of Doki in the main, who lets you discard a rock-type monster from your hand to special summon one of the same level, type, and attribute from your deck. And that actually does enable some interesting plays, especially considering the number of level 3s that I run in the main deck. Speaking of those level 3s, the first one is a pair of Block Golem. You contribute it while it's on the field if all the monsters in your graveyard are Earth, and special summon 2 level 4 or lower rock-type monsters from your graveyard, but their effects on the field cannot be activated this turn. Triple Gem Knight Lapis, which has actually ended up becoming the integral card to the deck's main combo system. It's a level 3 vanilla monster, but it's the best fusion material that I could possibly ask for out of this deck. It goes into almost anything. Similar to how Gem Knight Obsidian works, except its effect is that if it's sent from the hand to the graveyard, you can target a level 4 or lower normal monster in your grave and special summon it, which of course is going to be your Lapis. Now, Gem-Armadillo. Given that it didn't actually have Gem Knight in the name, I completely overlooked this card initially. But thanks to the new Link monster, it became an important resource card. When it's normal summoned, you can add to your hand a Gem Knight monster from your deck, and I have plenty of targets to make this card worthwhile. Also still running Triple Block Dragon. You cannot normal summon or set it, but you can special summon it from your hand or grave by banishing 3 Earth monsters from your graveyard. As long as it's face up, your rock-type monsters cannot be destroyed except by battle, which is great protection. And if for whatever reason this card were to go from the field to the graveyard, you can add up to 3 monsters, rock types, from your deck to your hand, whose total levels equal 8. And given the wide variety of low-level monsters I run in this, I can add 3 monsters to my hand in most instances and get a ton of fusion combos, just out of this one card. And I am still running 1 copy of Gaia Plate the Earth Giant. You can normal summon it if you want, but you can also special summon it by banishing 2 rocks out of your graveyard. Any monster that it battles has its stats cut in half during the damage step, and during your standby phase you do have to banish a rock monster out of your graveyard to keep him on the field, or he just sends himself to the graveyard. Next up we have the spell cards. Starting with a playset of Brilliant Fusion, of course, no Gem Knight deck would be complete without it. Sends material from the deck to the graveyard for the fusion summon of a Gem Knight Fusion monster. But it has no attack and defense unless you discard a spell from your hand to give it its full battle stats until the end of your opponent's turn. I don't really use that second aspect because the monster I usually call out with it doesn't stick around that long. 1 Dark Hole, staple. 1 Foolish Burial, mainly to get Block Dragon in the graveyard, but he's not the only target I have anymore. Triple Gem Knight Fusion, which is their basic Gem Knight Fusion spell, go figure. But it does have the additional effect of being able to banish a Gem Knight monster from your grave and put it back in your hand. 1 Monster Reborn, a new staple. 2 Pawn of Acquisitiveness, returning any 3 banished monsters back to the deck and letting you draw a card. Double Twin Twisters, because this deck actually does have worthwhile cards you can just discard without having to care. And Triple Unexpected Die. I do run 3 of the normal monster and 3 of this spell, which special summons a level 4 lower normal monster from your deck, because that normal monster is so important you want it on the field as fast as possible, or at the very least in your hand. And without wasting too much time on the subject, my trap cards are just the staples, 2 Bottomless, 1 Solemn, and 2 Torrential that I now run in every deck. Moving on, we get to the side deck. Starting with an additional copy of Laslie, an additional copy of Doki, an additional copy of Block Golem, an additional copy of Gaia Plate, a copy of Binary Sorceress, and yes, that does mean what you think it means. 2 MST, a third pot of Acquisitiveness, compulsory, 2 Fiendish Chain, triple Gozen match, which is perfect to run in this deck since every single monster in it is an Earth monster. Each player sends monsters they control to the graveyard until they each control only one attribute, and each player can only control one attribute. And 1 copy of Mirror Force. And finally, we finish up with the extra deck. Starting with 1 copy of Lady Lapis Lazuli, who can send a Gem Knight monster from your main or extra deck to the graveyard to burn your opponent for 500 damage for every special summon monster on the field. To be perfectly honest, I know this card is part of that really degenerate OTK Gem Knight burn system, but that is not what I use it for. Sure, I'll burn my opponent for a significant amount of damage, but I don't want to kill them that way, that's just no fun. I use this mainly to get rid of the Lazuli so I can re-add the Lapis for another fusion summon in the near future. I also run 1 copy of Seraphonite, who, despite the fact that I don't run any light monsters in the deck, I can still summon just as easily as any other card in this deck. And while it's face up on the field, I get the ability to do an additional normal summon. Triple Gem Knight Zirconia, a really easy fusion to make in this deck that I can just pop out when I need to get cards in the graveyard or something out of my hand that I just can't use anymore. Now, Gem Knight Master Diamond, though, he is incredibly useful because he allows me to reuse some of the lower level of Gem Knight Fusion monster effects, and he himself is a 2900 attack point beat stick who can get over most of my opponent's problematic monsters should that problem ever happen. But Lady Brilliant Diamond is my primary Brilliant Fusion target, and it has the ability to replace any Gem Knight monster I control with any other Gem Knight Fusion monster from my extra deck. Then we get into the links, starting with a copy of Link Spider. Since I did put so much emphasis on the normal monster, this should be an expected card for me to run, since it only requires 1 normal monster and special summons a normal monster from my hand once per turn. 2 Binary Sorceress. It's a generic link too, and it gains effects depending on the number of co-links. It can give you life points equal to the battle damage of one of your co-linked monsters, and it can add half the attack points of one monster you control to another. Then we get to the Gem Knight Phantom Quartz, the new A1 resource card for this deck. Requiring 2 gem monsters means that Gem-Armadillo himself can actually be used for link material. When it's link summoned, you can add any Gem Knight card from your deck to your hand, and for me, more often than not, it'll probably be a Gem Knight Fusion, or at worst, an Obsidian. And once per turn, you can pay 1,000 points to return fusion materials from your graveyard or that are banished to their decks and perform a fusion summon of a Gem Knight monster. I also have 1 Gaia Saber the Lightning Shadow, a generic Link 3 that I can use 2+ monsters on in the event that I'm kind of falling behind, but there is another specific reason as to why I run this card. This deck actually has the ability to perform the extra Link mechanic through use of him, Link Spider, Binary Sorceress, and the 2 copies that I currently run of Trigate Wizard. He is also a generic Link monster that requires 2+ monsters, and he gains the following effects depending on the number of co-links. He can double any battle damage a co-linked monster connected to this card does, banish a card on the field for free, and negate a card for free and banish it during either player's turn. And that is the deck. The deck is technically not complete yet because there is a monster coming out next set as part of the Troymare archetype, the Earthlink, that would allow me to keep my monsters from being destroyed under any aspect. The co-linked monsters would be protected by this new monster, Block Dragon would protect the rock monsters in the event I needed to go into that route, and as a result of this, I can pretty well protect myself with this array of monsters all the way into the end game. I thank you for watching the deck profile, and if you can think of any way that I can improve this all-Earth deck, feel free to let me know. But in the meantime, this has been Nanashi, signing out.
What's the next stage? What's the next stage?